This was one of the most tumultuous periods in Chinese history, and the world that Simon Quan was born into. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the Mexican government imported Chinese labor to aid in the construction of railroads and development of northern states. Unfortunately, a wave of anti-Chinese sentiment swept through Sonora and Sinaloa in the 1930s, leading to the illegal expulsion of many Chinese Mexican families who were forced to return to China. Among them was 2-month-old Simon Quan, who was born in Mexico on February 19, 1930. The Chinese Civil War between the nationalists and communists broke out in 1927 and lasted for over a decade. The Civil War was disrupted by the Japanese invasion of China in 1937. The two conflicting Chinese factions united to expel the Japanese, resulting in an agonizing period in Chinese history. The country was occupied by Japanese forces for 8 long years, and the conflict eventually merged with World War II. When World War II ended in 1945, the Chinese Civil War resumed and lasted for 4 additional years, with communist forces ultimately defeating the nationalists. During this period, landlords had their property confiscated and redistributed to the peasants. The landlords were charged with crimes against the peasants, and many were sentenced to death.
During the Civil War, all the landlord classes were persecuted, and some of them were executed, like my great-grandfather. And so they fled that. My grandmother first, with her youngest child, and my mother later in her teens, like when she was almost 20. Then my grandmother sent for her to be reunited with the family.
Simon Quan lived through this period and was witness to the horrors of war and occupation.
He lived through World War II. When the Japanese occupied China, they had to run from the village that they stayed in to Guangzhou province, which is a city in China. And as the Japanese advanced, they moved to Hong Kong, which they thought was a safe place because it was a British colony. But then they stayed in Hong Kong for about 2 years before the Japanese invasion. During that time, my dad was able to go to school. In all his life, he had 3 years of formal education. But then after that, when the Japanese occupied China, he did not have that opportunity anymore. He had to go to work. His mom was a single mother, raising 4 young children. And she had to work all day, from morning till night. And he had a younger sister who had to stay home and cook. And his younger sister would stay at home, cook, but then she wouldn't dare to eat until the mother came home. And one day she was so hungry, the daughter fainted and they had to revive her. That was the life that they had. They ate 1 meal a day and they ate it together. And during that time, when he was 11 years old, he became apprentice to the first photographer. Then after that, he did not like it that much, so they apprenticed him to a rice merchant as a servant boy. He was the one who emptied the chamber pot and poured tea for the boss. But then the boss saw him as a person who really was very smart. He was eager to please, he was quick to learn. And so he said, well, you would work well in my store. And so he put him in his store as an attendant. And after that, he learned how to use abacus on his own. He learned to read and write Chinese. He learned several dialects. That was when my grandmother noticed this guy. He seemed hardworking, honest, and he was unhealthy. Those are 3 important characteristics at that time when everybody is equally poor. Those are three traits that are good for a prospective husband or wife. So she said, oh, he would be a good person for my daughter. And so after three dates, they arranged to get married. And they were married in 1959, about a year before I was born.
Simon received a job offer from his uncle Augusto Quan, inviting him to work in Belize. Excited by the opportunity, Simon agreed to a 5-year contract as a live-in helper at Augusto Quan's store. And in exchange, his uncle would cover his travel expense and pay him $80 per month. In 1959, at the age of 29, and only months after getting married, Simon Quan left his pregnant wife with his mother and journeyed to Belize to start his new life.
Mr. Quan came to Belize at the invitation of his uncles, Augusto, William, and Henry Quan. Mr. Quan started to work with Augusto as a handyman. He worked with Augusto for a lot of years. Really, I don't know how much years, but I was with Mr. Quan from then, because I was with Augusto from then. And so we had a very good relationship. He was decent, honest, hardworking, trustworthy. You can depend on him. What I remember most about Mr. Quan is that the excitement that he had when he was told that he had a wife coming.
I was excited to come to Belize. We stayed at a few months with my cousins, with my, Augusto Quan and his daughters. As a child, it was easier for me to adapt. I think for my mom, it was more difficult because she had already been used to that sort of life. And to come here, she had to get used to the food and the insects, the mosquitoes, water, and everything. You have to get used to it. You have to get acclimatized to it, and the weather, and the living conditions as well. And so for me, it was easy. I adapted well. I went to my cousins took me to Whole Redeemer and said, you have a new student. There was no registration. They just said, oh, she wants to go to school. The principal said, okay. We entered the classroom. I didn't know a word of English, but somehow I got along,
Mr. Quan, after so many years with Augusto, was given his opportunity to open his own business. He rented a business on Queen Street that used to house Radi's Ice Cream Parlor and later Shama Ice Cream Parlor. It was a small business. I recall when Mr. Quan got things from Augusto, and it was a few cases of this and a few cases of that. He opened a grocery store and also a vegetable store.
The person who occupied it wanted to go to the States, and so he heard about it. He had a $500 to start with. He started off with about $500, enough to buy lumber to build some shelves on the place and pay probably the first month's rent.
Mr. Quan worked so hard that over the years, where he is now is his. And not only that, he acquired nearly the entire block.
Simon have seen a lot of hard time, you see, in the beginning, because he used to work for Augusto Quan. He has really worked hard. He just wanted to see only one thing, that my family will not go through what he has gone through. I have not seen any store or any hard-working man like him, except this Augusto Quan family that time.
Mr. Quan was the type of man that he served his customers. He listened to his customers. And he told me, you see, John, to be successful, you have to have something of everything. Something of everything. He said, I want my name to go down, that whenever the people that go to any other business and they can't find what they need, they are told, go to Simon Quan. And that is very true up to this present moment. You can Go to Simon Quan and pick up anything you need.
I learned a lot from him because first we used to only bring the goods, import that we sell. But now, anything from anywhere and mostly from them. Many people now even tell me in my store who don't know. He says, you are like a little Simon Quan because you have everything.
He used to have a carrier bicycle, and that was his joy. His joy was to go and pick up goods with his carrier bicycle and to deliver goods with his carrier bicycle. Mr. Quan never took a day off work. I recall trying to get him to go and visit the Keys and the district towns and other places. And he accepted, and we went. But of course, he went to see business, what can be sold and who can, And that was good of him. Everybody from north to south, from east to west, including the Keys, know who Simon Quan is. I suspect he is the only businessman, not Chinese, but businessman, who everybody know. He was likable. He always calling out to people. They always saw him in his little white sport shirt and his khaki pants.
Simon Quan faced numerous challenges at the start, but he persevered and his business flourished. With the help and support of his wife and the early involvement of his children at the store, their combined efforts paid off, leading to its present success.
My mom is an achiever. She's a great wife, she's a great supporting role behind my dad and the business as well. My mom is a fast thinker. Also, she is a businesswoman, a wife, a mom, and she supports all those roles fully. She would work from morning. She would get up, shake her bottles, her babas for all the babies, give them, pacify them. Then she works on breakfast for everybody, all the older children and my dad and her. And then when she's done, she does the laundry and whatever, then goes down to the store until like 11:30. She runs upstairs, she makes lunch, has a whole nice hot meal of lunch on the table. Eats lunch, 12 noon. By 12 noon, everybody's finished. We open back at 1 o'clock. She works again, maybe take a 15-minute nap, maybe not even that. Works again until 5. She runs upstairs, cook for 6 o'clock meal. Everything always fresh. We don't eat out a lot. We would, as frugal as it is, we would share a bottle of Coke with 9 of us, 7 of us, 5 of us, and we'll share a bottle of Coke. We all baba and everything in it. Everybody just sip, hand it down to everybody. But that's how loving we are. We share. And she would just wake up the following day doing the same thing all over again, without complaining, and then she has babies year after year, But I just think that my mom is a saint, honestly. She really is. She carried the business, she carried us, she took care of the family.
But everybody had to work in the business. It was mandatory. After school, on Saturdays, Sundays, whenever you're needed, you need to go and help in the store. That was, instead of having a playroom, that was our, the place where we pass our time. The store was where we pass our time.
He would set a time for us, meaning like, okay, if you go to school, you go to school for whatever duration of the day, and as soon as you get back, you have your lunch or your snack, and then boop, you come downstairs and you start your chores.
The business is as strong as we make it. And so all the kids take a part and pride and so happy to be in the business. I was 5 when I started and I was so excited. I always loved going to the store. I don't like doing housework and all that. So I got away from housework just by going to the store. But I would stand on step stools and I would cut cloth. And even if they're crooked, my mom laughs at it and I said, next time you do better.
For my dad, family was key. He says that you're only as successful in your business as you can be successful as a family. He understood the importance of the support of my mom, and he understood the importance of the support of his kids. When sometimes they joke to him and I say, Mr. Simon, you have so much kids because you need to for work, don't you? And he would laugh and he said, yeah, the more kids I have, the more workers I have. But yes, but aside from that, he understood that trusting your family and your kids is tantamount to the success of your business. And that, I think that was critical in the transition from him moving from just his proprietorship to being a company with his kids as a part of his business.
He thinks different, right? A lot of the things that I disagreed with strongly with him, right? Turned out to be, he was right. He was prophetic even, right? Like, for instance, when he wanted to purchase the building next door to expand the business, I thought that was not such a good idea. It turned out that was one of the foundations of our enterprise. When he wanted to develop the warehouse at Northern Highway, I thought that was way out, and he's the older person, but he has the younger vision. Whatever he seemed to do, which was ridiculous, crazy at that time, turned out to be a foundation of our development.
The store was original Simon Quan. Everything was behind the counter, and somebody had to get it for you. And then when I came out of high school, he opened a little branch next door, and he said, you know, you need to put your goods out there so people can touch it and pick it and see what they want. So we did that with a part of the store, and it took off. And from then on, he said, well, you have to do the whole store now. That, you know, because, I mean, he gave it to us, but he didn't do it, just like, that's the idea. And so we did it. And from there, it took off. And now the store is almost fully, customers come in and pick out their stuff, and, you know, but it's an evolution.
The Quans placed a high importance on education and spared no expense on schooling, sending the children to university with the hope that they would return to work in the family business.
So everybody has to take a year to work after sixth form before leaving for college, while the other one finishes college and comes back, and then the next one goes. So everybody, between around 5 of us, went one after the other. My mom always insisted that even though you know you want to do business, you have to get a degree. She wants all her kids to have a college education, because you don't know if anything happens in the future. At least you have an education you can fall back on.
In terms of going abroad to do my university studies, yes, my father encouraged it, but at the same time he was saying, you know, your opportunity would be better here served in Belize. And then I said all in my mind, you know what, as soon as I get my degree, I have to pack up and head back.
Before I left for college, I had already been working in the store, kind of like helping with the development, and I knew that I wanted to come back. I saw what my parents had built. I mean, I knew there was lots more to go, but I appreciated that they had laid the foundation for a business, and I wanted to build on it. I loved being in the store.
People are seeking different things. Some people are shopping online. All these changes have to come with new ideas and new blood.
What made me decide to come back and work in the store was, honestly, it was my grandfather's passing. They built something that had fed our entire family, you know, and everybody go through school, everybody just live off of it. And I can't just give it up just like that. In terms of my role here, people here call me the baby boss because I'm the youngest, and you know I'm still considered a boss and manager here. I help with the everyday activities, day-to-day activities. My goal was basically to integrate technology into the business, because we're very old-fashioned here. Right? We do everything. I mean, manually, by books, by paper, you know, stuff like that. So we're trying to slowly change that, or I'm trying to. So my job basically here is day-to-day activities, but also work on projects to improve the business, improve the store. My first 2 years, the first thing I did was expand the store, and it was a success. And I mean, I feel proud to see it, you know. I mean, every day, and that drives me to just continue trying to improve and better the store for us as managers and to the customers.
Hard work and family were priorities for Simon Quan, and he found ways to balance the two in his own unique way.
Family is, of course, big on his list. You know, business is important, but at the end of the day, there's family comes first. That's throughout he worked hard. There were, of course, many opportunities where we didn't get to spend time together because he was working. But the time that he had available, he made sure he spent it with his family.
He's very disciplined though. One thing I mean, when I was growing up, he's very disciplined because he tried to instill that discipline in me, where I clearly remember every morning I get up, and then he'd make do karate. First thing in the morning, the karate, do some push-ups, and he would do some pull-ups. And even up to the time he passed away, he could easily do 10 pull-ups, which I think is very impressive. So up to this day, I make sure I could always 10.
He was strict. There's no doubt about that. He was very strict. If you do something wrong, we used to have something called a feather duster, and you would get it. I mean, like, you know, he wouldn't be afraid to give you a couple whips with that if you did something wrong. He was strict in that sense. But he was also loving in his own way. I mean, you know, back then there weren't many things you could buy, but I remembered several Christmases growing up, he always tried to get his kids a little Christmas gift. And his gesture of what our gift was, he bought 5 red umbrellas, folding umbrellas, and he gave each of us an umbrella as a Christmas gift. But everybody got the same thing, you know. That's how he showed he cared, you know, because, oh, you could take it to school.
He used to do deliveries on his bicycle. And during the slow periods, he would put in an empty box, and, you know, I would sit inside of it, and we would go for a drive.
My father said, okay, listen, it's Easter time, you know. And back then I remembered all my schoolmates, they all say, okay, they're going to the Keys, they're going to a farm and pour us. We were at in the store, you know, just selling Easter eggs, and we said, oh well, where everybody going? And I said, okay, at least I have Easter eggs. But my dad said, listen, I'll give you a treat. And so he said, okay, jump on my carrier bike. So he took me, Lisa, and I think it was Lupita, and he took us to the barracks. You know, the new, now it's BTL Park. And back then it was a location for people to go and swim. And I said, okay, you see this? This is where I will treat you guys. I said, oh, Pa, that is awesome. You know, I said, at least I have a chance to see so-called a key in Belize.
Oh, he was a great guy because I used to admire him from the 1973. He used to take his small children every Sunday on a bicycle cart and Fort George for swimming and buying a nice sandwiches and everything for them.
My parents, there was no noodles, and we were Asian, so we needed to have noodles, and that was one of the pastimes, making it from scratch. This was not work at downstairs in the store. This was pastime, enjoying each other's company, doing the things for food for the family. The next thing my mom used to enjoy was sewing. She would sew her sheets, pillowcases, things like that. My dad would play his harmonica.
TV was just coming in when I was growing up, so he would watch TV. Like, you know, like I know when one point there was wrestling. Wrestling was a hot thing, and he used to like to watch wrestling. I don't know if you really believe those things, but he used to just watch it and be amazed at all the antics that they would do. But that's something he would do, you know. And he used to like to go to movies, because back then there was Palace, there was Majestic, Eden, I think. And Majestic was right down the street from us, yeah. And he would choose the nights where they have double headers. So you get 2 movies for the price of 1. And so he would buy 2 tickets, one for him and one for me and my brother. So we would sit on the same chair. So he would take it. They allowed 2 kids to go in on an adult ticket, you know. So he would he would go and he would take 2 of us, and we'd sit in the chair. And of course, by the time the movie is done, Antonio is sleeping, so he has to carry Antonio home.
My dad loved telling stories. So my mom and dad, all the kids would sit at the table. We enjoyed the stories.
From 1998, I used to tell him every day, whenever I meet, Simon, take holiday. See, I just took 6 months. My business is still running. Don't worry, you have a more army than I have. So many children and you. So he always smiled. And then first time, I don't remember what year, he went to China tour. Not for business, purely tour, and he came back, he was so happy. And after that, how many trips he make, I don't know, but all the time I used to see, when I'm missing him, I asked Peter, his son, oh, my dad is traveling. So I say, at least in the last part of his life, he really traveled and enjoyed.
My most memorable experience with him was when I was traveling with him to Asia. My dad, he is an easygoing traveler. He's not uptight when it comes to schedules. He will go when he feels like. And so it was, for me personally, that was an amazing experience, just being with him, traveling through Asia, eating different foods. Whenever we went to eat, he would order everything off the menu. And of course, he would not eat most of it, and I would end up having to eat most of it. So, but that was, for me, the most memorable experience I had with my dad.
Do you shop at Simon Quan?
Sure I do.
Why?
Because I love to shop at Simon Quan, and they always have various things that you need to buy, you name it, and they have it right there.
For me, Simon Quan is integral part of Belize.
And what did you like about the store?
It's neat, and they basically have everything we want.
Everything come to those who perspire while in the wait, but they have to have faith. And Simon Quan had faith to start from a whole board house, and also you know how much building and place they have around Belize. And Belizean say, they China, them people are more Creole than a lot of we right now. You know? And anything you want, check Simon Quan.
Simon Quan was a genuine philanthropist in Belize who discreetly provided aid to numerous citizens and supported several charitable organizations.
He believed that you should get back to the society what you're getting from the society.
He has instilled in us that we have to give back.
He was so kind to everybody.
When it comes to humble, no businessman amount of donation he used to give till this date. Their family, anybody goes from the school, churches, they are the number one. I always tell them, I say, listen, Simon Quan gives so much money to this, so much. Nobody, from their door, nobody can come empty-handed.
He always reminded you, remember that we came from humble beginnings, you know. Always remember people need your help, help who you can help, you know, and share in what you've been successful in, you know. You see, he always used to say, like, Belize has been good to him, and he feels that he needs to give back to Belize because Belize has made him what he is. So he always remembers that. And I think that kind of like what made him do what he did, you know, in terms of being generous and, you know, reaching out to other people.
Mr. Quan was unique. He was what you call a complete humanitarian. The humility that Simon had, I don't see it any businessman in Belize.
He never publicized any of his donations. It was always, you know, they came to him, they needed help with a project or funding for a project, and he would give generously. I mean, he wouldn't think twice. I mean, there were, of course, special organizations that were close to his heart. The Sisters of Mercy, the Palatine Sisters, the Sister Cecilia's Home. he was always very, very generous when it came to those organizations.
His generosity to the society did not go unnoticed, and Simon Quan received numerous honors and recognition from various organizations for his outstanding contribution to the community he served. He was awarded by the Queen for his philanthropic efforts, honored by the Belize Chamber of Commerce for his commitment to community development, and recognized by several other organizations for his exceptional charitable work.
The one thing I knew, or the one thing that he taught us, right, was the love for the country, right? And the person who exemplifies his vision or his feeling the most is Lupita, actually. The way she actually tries to support the community, right? That's actually a legacy of my father she's carrying on.
My history with volleyball started as a player. I just loved the sport, and early in the years I played it for fun. And later on, maybe like in my mid-20s, my late 20s, we started going on national teams. And back then it was a struggle because the sport was young. And so there were very few female players that were really at the level to play national team. So it was always hard to hold a team together, to say have a team every time. We struggled to make 12 sometimes, and the fundraising aspect of it also, you know, everybody had to come up with their own funds and to pay for the trip and all that. That's when I also started getting involved with high school volleyball, when Sister Caritas was the principal of SCA, and they asked me to come back and coach. So I went back and I started coaching high school, and we took a beating for the first 2 years, and I realized, you know, these girls can play, but they don't play enough. And that's when I got the idea, you know, we need to have them play year-round. I started, SCA had no auditorium back then. It was just outdoors. So I started renting SJC to have sessions year-round, like from 4 to 7, to have the girls go practice and get them more involved, you know, playing more. And then from there, we went on to Belize, Belize Elementary School. We went to their gym to just have a place, and we kept getting kicked out of there because they have functions and all kinds of stuff. And my mom had this property that we're sitting on right now, and I went to her and I said, Mom, would you give me permission to build a gym in a property? And she looked at me like, what? I said, yes. I said, because our sport needs a place to call home. And it would be only for volleyball. We wouldn't do anything else in it just so we can train. And to my surprise, she said, do it. Just like that. I was like shocked. So we got the family to fund the building. And from there I said, you know what? This is now where volleyball will train. And since then, we've had training all year round at all age groups. And through that, I mean, it didn't happen immediately, but like 2 years later, the entire junior program took off, the senior program took off, and since then, Belize has been doing very well in terms of female volleyball.
Good block, good control block. Let's go to Melissa, to Fatima.
Why just female volleyball? Because when I was playing, the guys were always good. They always played well, and they always had people, they had enough players to play. They never had a problem choosing a team. Female teams are always struggling to find players. So I said, we need to build the base of the players for females. Even when I was playing, my father didn't like it. He says, you should be doing more work. You shouldn't be going out to practice and going on these trips and whatever. But eventually he understood that I wouldn't stop. I kept playing. My mom, the same thing. I think initially he would have thought that the investment was a lot, because a lot of my personal investment is in it. But I think based on how my mom reacts now, I think he would have been extremely proud, because I think he understands that what we have done is something wonderful for Belize as a country. It's not for me, for this club, but it's for the country. The amount of joy and pride that we've brought for the country is nothing I would have imagined. I didn't even think when I was going after it, I thought it would mean so much.
Good rally here.
It is something that he would be proud. He is proud, and not only for Lupita, but for the people she's touched. And this is also in the line of giving back, touching the lives of people that really and truly could not have done it without her. And that is what my dad would have been smiling and loving. He would have been in those chairs, in those bleachers, cheering on the team, the Belize team, looking at Lupita with pride.
Simon Quan expressed deep appreciation towards the citizens of Belize for welcoming him and enabling him to adapt to his new surroundings. However, he also desired to uphold his Chinese heritage, including its cultural practices and traditions, as an integral part of his identity.
Well, I feel more a part of Belizean society than I would, part of Hong Kong society. As I say, I was born there, but I was raised here. So I feel a part of Belizean society. When I came here, there was a lot of outright racism. People. I used to get teased. I used to get ridiculed. We can't speak our language. Out in public, and it's different now. I think Chinese people have become part of the Belizean society, and I hope it continues this way. We are part of it, and as my dad said, you have to be socially aware, socially conscious. He used to always say, maintain your cultural identity, because that's why he is so awed by the Garifuna culture. Because he was invited to attend one of the Garifuna presentations, and he was so inspired, and he admired the fact that they could speak their language so fluently, and they can maintain their culture, their music and their language and their arts in such a manner. And so that is what he had envisioned for Chinese people here in Belize, to integrate into society, but at the same time, keep their traditions and be culturally aware of their own identity.
After a brief illness, Simon Quan passed away in Mexico, where he was receiving treatment. The family was touched, even shocked, by the outpouring of love and support from the Belizean public.
I had never felt closer to the Belizean society than I did then. Lots of times there is some friction or whatever, but then underlying it, you can see that there is an acceptance and a love, right? That we are one people.
It was around Christmas time. It was December the 11th, and we had the funeral on the 15th, so it led into Christmas. And I think the family being together at that time, every Christmas everybody comes home. At that time, they came home earlier, but everybody spent Christmas together. It was different, but I think that was what helped my mom in a lot of ways to handle the grief.
When my dad passed away, it was a tough time. It hit me hard. It still hurts today. When I got the news of my dad's passing, there were a lot of emotions. Of course, with most, it's regret. Regret that maybe you didn't get to spend enough time.
It was not a bad passing, right? He passed being taken care of. He went knowing that he was loved and taken care of.
Sister Caritas, who was the principal of St. Catherine's Academy at the time, delivered the eulogy, which was a valuable chance and honor to acknowledge the man who had steadfastly supported the Roman Catholic educational and religious institutions in Belize for decades.
Mr. Quan was happy with his life. He was always grateful that even though coming from such meager means, he was able to be his own boss. He traveled to many places and he met many peoples of all cultures. He dined with royalty and prime ministers, and he mingled with the poorest, holding each with respect and gratitude. He always said he was happy with his life and that he owed his fortune to his ancestors, his wonderful wife, his children, and the people of Belize. His store was also the people's store. In his lifetime, Mr. Quan saw the family business grow, watched with proud satisfaction as one by one his children took on the dream and expanded the vision. Peter, Lupita, and Antonio stayed with Simon Quan's store and moved it beyond their father's greatest expectations. To those children who wished to branch out in other business ventures, he gave his support and encouragement. Emily's Tony's store, Lisa's celebration, and Julian's Belize's fish and cattle. 3 of his daughters, Millie, Antonia, and Marion, have decided to live abroad. All his children are living examples of his ability to love. His ability to love his children and set them free to dream their own dreams and follow their own star. Although Mr. Quan is known by most Belizeans, I do not think that many are aware of his generous contributions to this nation. He is one of our greatest benefactors. Mr. Simon Quan will continue to live on in the love and memory of his beautiful wife, Boyi, his 9 wonderful children, Emily, Peter, Lisa, Millie, Lupita, Antonio, Antonia, Julian, and Marion, his 15 grandchildren, his nieces and nephews, and the people of Belize, for whom he has been icon, patron, hero, benefactor, and friend.